I thought the best way to do Jeremy's eulogy would be in the form of a YouTube video. I can't believe I just said that sentence. I can't believe I am sitting here on my floor as I filmed hundreds of videos and that this is what we're talking about today. I even Googled how to write your husband's eulogy. I never thought I would be doing this, especially not in my 30s, but here we are. Like Janice just said, Jer and I met in Prince George in 2005. He was the afternoon DJ on a country station and I was a reporter. And then I became a news anchor and I read the news on his show. And right away, Jeremy stood out to me. His excitement, his passion, his loud voice, which, you know, you just couldn't not hear. His laugh. Something that struck me right away was the passion that he had for radio, music, sports, but for his career. And the first thing that struck me about him was that he'd moved away for his job. And I thought that that was so noble and so rare, especially in our generation. I have so many fond memories in Prince George and so many amazing people. It was such a fun young town and we had a blast. We'd go to hockey games, every concert that came to town. That's one of the perks when you work in radio. You may not make a lot of money, but you get to go to a lot of free shows, and we took advantage of that to the extreme. We quickly fell for each other and quickly fell in love. He first told me he loved me by a waterfall in Smithers. And we were inseparable, and we spent 18 months together in Prince George. We first took a trip together. Our first big trip was to visit my brother and my sister-in-law in Philadelphia. We went to New York, we went to Washington, DC, we saw a baseball game in Baltimore, and we didn't say it to each other, but we'd both been thinking it separately that like this was a big test of our relationship. And it was amazing. Quickly after that, I missed home and I told him that I was gonna move back to Penticton and he could come if he wanted to, and he did. We did long distance for only a few months, and in an incredibly amazing move, Jeremy left an afternoon show to move to Penticton to do part-time weekends just to be with me. We had a tiny basement suite, so incredibly small, but we loved it. And he quickly got a full-time job doing afternoons on Easy Rock AM 800 after doing a year on Sun Mornings filling in. And he loved it. He loved the Okanagan. He always said that he couldn't believe that this was our hometown. And he quickly made himself known in the community, whether it was, you know, cheering for the V's or emceeing countless events, championing so many causes, and just really building a following on Easy Rock. He loved the Red Wings. The day, I don't remember what year it was. I think it was, I can't remember when it was, but they lost the Stanley Cup, and I have never seen a grown man so heartbroken. It was, he had to take a walk. I think he broke a few sticks that day. But he always spoke so fondly of all of his friends in Langley and growing up there and just so many incredible times. And then we built a foundation in Penticton. Just too many friends to count, too many friends to name. But he always had a smile on his face and he was always up for a good time. In 2008, Jeremy proposed, and he was pretty sneaky about it and actually pretty risky about it, because we talked about it and we'd even gone to look at rings, and then he made me believe that he wasn't ready and that it wasn't gonna happen anytime soon. That was a risky little game, but quickly he proposed to me in our tiny little basement suite, wearing a stupid Bart Simpson t-shirt after he made me breakfast one morning. And it was perfect. I always said to him, if you propose on the big screen, like on a Jumbotron, I'm gonna say no. And even just laughing and thinking about all of the incredible millions of laughs Jer and I shared, he was the first one who ever thought I was funny. And he was the first person, or one of the first few, who I was authentically myself around. I never had to mince words around him. We talked about everything. I never had to pretend to be anything. I never had to put on a front with him. And he thought I was funny. He thought I was beautiful. And he was just so encouraging and so respectful and so loving. We had about a year engagement, and in that year I was hell-bent on not coming back from our honeymoon into that tiny little basement suite. So we bought a house, the house that I'm sitting in right now, and we built a life in this home and in this town. And a funny story, he always called me Furnace, because I emit a lot of body heat. I may not feel warm, but apparently I emit a lot, so I can keep others warm. And so he always called me Furnace, and I always called him Meatball. And I hated when he would tell the story, because the story of how he became Meatball, or Uncle Meatball, as my beautiful niece referred to him as, we were in a restaurant and we were having spaghetti and we were on a date, a double date, and Jeremy started choking on the meatball and I didn't do anything. Another friend got up and had to do the Heimlich maneuver, and the spaghetti and meatballs came up. No joke. I thought he was just doing this because we were like, oh, Jeremy, how do you like your food? And he's like, went like this, and we thought he just meant it was good. He was choking. So for some reason, that nickname stuck. And he became Meatball and I became Furnace. And it's so random and so ridiculous, but it was our love. And he, early on in our relationship, said he never wanted kids. And I was like, well, that's a deal breaker, because I was pretty sure I wanted them. And in his first visit here to Penticton, before we moved here, he met my niece and she changed his mind. He fell in love with her and decided that he wanted to have a family. So we got married in 2009, had an amazing honeymoon in Jamaica, and then we spent a little bit of time as newlyweds, and then we went on another trip to Philadelphia and saw my other niece, and that was it. He wanted to have kids. So I got pregnant, and in May of 2011, we welcomed Thomas. I can't believe I'm doing this right now. Even when I was in labor, Jeremy was making me laugh. And he would always tell this story about how I may or may not have had too much laughing gas when I was in labor, and I started doing voices. But it was such a magical experience. And the second Thomas was born, the first thing that little boy did the second he came out was he wrapped his fingers around Jeremy's finger, and they were hooked. He showed me such love when I was pregnant, love like I'd never seen before, I'd never felt before. He was so protective. And then after we had Thomas, it was just different. It was such a love and such a papa bear, just so much protection. I always felt very protected, and I always said that to him. He never lashed out. He never you know, would get angry, but if anyone ever did cross me or he felt like I was in danger, there was a couple times and he just stepped in, and I loved that. We took lots of trips together, lots of, so many trips down to Langley to see his family, to Vancouver, you know, lots of road trips to his family farm in Alberta. We went to Saskatchewan, Banff, so many trips together. Vegas, and then he went on a trip to Nashville, which you'll hear about a little bit later this afternoon, and Detroit. That was his bucket list trip for sure, and we're gonna see more about that. But it's just something about a love between a father and a son. And Thomas is named after my dad, and his middle name is Nelson, which is Jeremy's mom's maiden name. And that was Jeremy's idea. He came up with Thomas Nelson, and it was just so perfect. So, you know, we found out that Thomas had hearing loss less than 12 hours after he was born. That was followed by countless trips, countless tests, and then at 3 months he got hearing aids. And we were terrified, but we just, one foot in front of the other, we just did it because we knew we had to. And all along the way, Jeremy was still so passionate about radio and music and his job and the Red Wings, and then he became an avid Phillies fan, and the amount of joy that he got out of sports I will never understand, but it was just, he just got so much love out of it. And music, all kinds of music. I was looking through his iTunes the other day and I was like, what? You have stuff from all kinds of pop artists as well as country and rock. I just loved it. And then we found out a few years later that, you know, Thomas is on the autism spectrum, and again, we had to take everything in stride, and Thomas had to go to Children's Hospital and have his cochlear implant surgery, and it was really, really hard, but he did his best. And then Jeremy'd always been anxious and always nervous, and then a couple of years ago things changed. It just got really heavy and really hard, and he realized, once he finally came clean with it and decided to get help, that he'd suffered probably since he was a teenager. He said he could look back and realize it. And he was terrified to tell me. He was, you know, terrified to go to our doctor and talk about medicine. He'd never even been on antibiotics before, but he did it because he knew that he needed to, and he knew that that's what was best. It was really scary. There was times where Jeremy couldn't be left alone. We had to call in reinforcements, his family. My mom flew back from Arizona. It was a really scary time. But I do admire how much he took care of himself. Started doing yoga, started going to counseling, and right away, Jeremy knew. He was like, when he came back from being on leave because of his anxiety, he was like, I am not gonna lie to people. I am gonna tell them. I have nothing to hide. And it all changed. It all changed then. So many people, oh my goodness, I couldn't even tell you. Hundreds of people came to him and said, me too, me too. And I would say almost bombarded by the amount of people who felt that they could speak up and take care of themselves because Jeremy did the same. And he did. He worked on his mental health and his self-care so tirelessly, unlike any other man I know. Going to therapy, you know, 2 different therapists, and it was a really dark time, but he really tried. And, you know, he was improving, and it just, he said to me, I'm always going to be fighting this. This is always going to be my battle. And it was really hard. It was really hard to try and keep him alive. It was really just terrifying. And I know that the way in which Jeremy left us is not his legacy. His legacy is how many people he helped. Thomas, that sweet little face. And I know so many of you have been touched by him, and I've been overwhelmed with support and love in the last week. The best way that you can honor Jeremy, and the best way that you can carry on his legacy, if he helped you at all, touched you at all, if you listened to him on the radio, if you traded hockey cards, if you worked with him, or if you were at a V's game when he was emceeing, if you watch my YouTube channel, if you're a marathoner, the best thing you can do is take care of yourself. Jeremy would not want this for you. He had so much care for other people who were struggling like him, and so much love. Take care of yourself. This is not okay. And I feel a real responsibility to say that to you. That this is, Jeremy couldn't take the pain anymore. But I want you to keep fighting. Because I can't imagine the future. We all loved Jeremy, and you're gonna hear from so many people today. I want to say thank you to everyone who sent videos and who's been sending me messages, and oh my gosh, it's just, I cannot even fathom his reach. And I wish he knew it, and I wish he saw that. He was a good man, and he struggled for a really long time. And I know he's now at peace. Thank you all for coming today and supporting us. Keep supporting us. We love you, Meatball.